Well, I'm Jens Olesen. I'm the president of the Danish Brazilian Chamber of Commerce. I'm too Consul General of Norway, and I'm ambassador to Copenhagen. Plus, I'm sitting on a lot of Danish, American, and Brazilian boards. I've been in this business now for about close to 50 years. And 41 and a half years, I was president of Mccann and vice chairman of the worldwide company, which was the biggest communication conglomerate in the world with 130,000 employees. But now let's talk about the chamber, because that's why you're here. The Danish Brazilian Chamber of Commerce is going to celebrate 70 years in the end of this year, 2015. It's an organization which are helping Danish company to get into the Brazilian market, is promoting Denmark and trying to give our members access to things which they normally don't have access to. That means government contacts on the highest level, from the president down to ministers, have contacts with selected business leaders, particularly Brazilians, and at the same time to help them to feel comfortable in a very complex Brazilian market, which from a business point of view is not easy. It's actually extremely complex. We have some 10 ground rules of how to be successful in Brazil. And one of the things we're saying always is that you must have a network. And the network is the Danish companies. We have 100 members here in the club, in the organization, in the Danish Chamber. It's practically all Danish companies. Probably 95% of Danish business is part of this organization. We arrange about 22 major events, from business lunches to breakfast lunches, to workshops, to seminars, to investing seminars, to business councils. We take care of ministerial delegations, business delegations from Denmark, university delegations, and many times we help even with the royal visits. So we are extremely busy of servicing our members. That's why we're here. Brazil is a country with a lot of opportunities. It's a country too with a lot of problems. Right now we're going through a so-called crisis, which too can be very opportunistic for the right companies. So even though we have extreme economical pressure, both on business, from the government, with all this corruption going on all over the place, with Petrobras being in big trouble, with the interest rate going up nearly every month now up to 12.75, which is the second highest in the world. We're very worried about the credit rating of Brazil, which might be downgraded by the end of the month, 1 or 2 points, which would not be good for Brazil. But let's look at the other side. The other side is that Brazil is a rich country in terms of everything. We have an energy, water, electricity kind of a crisis right now. I think it's rained a lot in February, so this has helped a little bit, but it has to rain much more to solve that crisis. So everybody has to be very careful what they do. Electricity cost is going up, and this is obviously having an effect on business and a lot of things. But even that can be solved in a rational and with a strategical approach from the government and from the local and the state governments. Now, I'll put it that way. I think 2015 is going to be a difficult year, a complex year. It might be, for some people, a bad year, but at the same time, there's a lot of opportunities that always are in Brazil. And that's why I'm here. That's why I stayed here for a long time, because Brazil is a country full of opportunities. I always say that to all new Danish companies been here for some time. You can never look at Brazil on a short-term basis. You have to look at Brazil on a long-term basis. And if you do that in a sensible way, you have a quality product or quality service, then you will succeed in Brazil at accessibility and at a reasonable cost, which are competitive in the marketplace. So Denmark is a quality country with quality products. So Danish companies normally has good success in Brazil. And I'll say that maybe right now the service industry is not having an easy time, the automobile industry is not having an easy time, and the oil and gas industry is having not an easy time. But even there's a lot of opportunities. And therefore, you have to look at it medium, long term, and then I think you're going to be all right. And we as the Chamber are very close to the realities of Brazil. We know what's going on. We have contacts with a lot of people who knows more about Brazil than most ministers and the government. And therefore, we are well informed of what's going on. And therefore, we can advise and talk intelligently with our clients, with some Danish companies in Brazil. I didn't ask to settle in Brazil. I was transferred from an American company, which I worked for 41 and a half years. I lived in 16 different countries around the world. I'm educated in the States at Columbia and Harvard University and London School of Economics. So I have an international background, more or less when I left Denmark as a student. I've been outside Denmark since I was 20 years old and lived in the world. And so I'm really a globalist. I'm not a Brazilianized, I'm not a Danish. I call myself a global international executive. That's what I am. And that's my force, and that's why I can give a lot of advice to Danish companies. Well, I mean, if you have a reasonable good education and you have some experience from other markets, Brazil is obviously a very interesting market to be part of because it's a very big market. And I think Brazil offers a lot of opportunities for both international and obviously for Brazilian companies. If they have a quality service or product or industry, then they normally will do pretty well. I ran a major communication conglomerate in Brazil, and one of the focus I had was on strategical planning. Planning is a key for success. Sometimes Brazilians are not too good at this, but I'm probably the one who has launched strategical planning in Brazil in the 70s and 80s. So I know what it meant for my company, for my clients, and for my business in the years ahead. And that was to plan, and to control cost at any time. So you could control the cost in a good time, in a bad time, or whatever. And at the same time have people which was trained, which was motivated, which had chance to be promoted in the environment of the company. And I had a turnover about 1%, which is completely unheard of in my business communication, which used to be 30, 35. And that was because people felt really that this was a good place to work. There was a chance to be promoted, work on big accounts, big challenges, big opportunities. And that's the way I was successful in Brazil, to build a company of 200 million to about $3.5 billion over about a 20-25 years period. And many people have done that. I'm not the only one. But I tell you, my key has been the focus on strategical planning. Planning is a way to create and control success and where your own destiny is going. And that's what I've done. But all people, whoever they are, whatever level they are in an organization, has to feel that they have room to grow, they have room to be trained, they have room that people will invest in them and they will invest in you. And if you do that in a sensible, constructive and positive way, you will find that you get an employee or him. And I've done that with very good success. I was the first one to make a woman vice president in 1970s, was a sensation in Brazil. And that was a lady in strategical planning. I was the first one to make a general manager woman in Latin America. In the end, I had 6 women general managers. I was the first one to make one regional director in part of Latin America. So I always believe that it doesn't matter if you're a man, woman, whatever color you have or sex, it doesn't make any difference. What it is, it means that this person has the right experience, the right attitude, and the right way of going forward in a good way. I have 0 tolerance for corruption in my company. I always had it. I was known in the market as Mr. Clean because I threw people out of my office. I've done it many times. If people even attempted to talk to me about it, and they could never return to Mccann Erickson again. That's the way it is. That's the same in the chamber. Zero tolerance for corruption. We discuss this practically 2 or 3 times a year in meetings. And even companies will have some problems. We try to help them. And we know that anybody who's doing it, they cannot look themselves in the mirror. They cannot sleep at night. In the end, they get caught in a circle, which is a never-ending circle, which just ends up with a disaster for them, their family, and for the company. So we are zero tolerance for corruption. I pointed out a lot of opportunities there would be for Brazilian business in Denmark. To ambassadors, I make presentations, I talk to the press, I talked here, I give presentations in the chambers and all that. But until now we have not succeeded very well, which is a pity. But it should be possible to get 3, 4, 5 Brazilian companies to enter the Danish market. Norway and Sweden has very big companies. And these big companies, when they invest a lot of money. Sweden has traditionally been the 3rd largest market in the world. It's usually been Stockholm, Gothenburg, and São Paulo. And it still is. So Sweden is really making a lot of money. Now with a contract for Gripen, for the airplanes, it's a $10 billion contract, which will go at 4 times and might get up to 40 billion. So it's a huge contract. Norway, because of the oil and gas, until now, has invested a lot of money, up to $6 billion a year in Brazil. And their close connection with Petrobras, since they have a technology which really Brazil doesn't have. They don't know how to really drill on very deep water, but both Statoil and has this experience, and therefore it's very valuable for Brazilian government and Petrobras to have very good relations with the Norwegians. Denmark is in another business. Denmark has very few big companies. The biggest probably being Maersk, the Maersk Group. Then they have Novo Nordisk and Novozymes and Grundfos and Danfoss and Hempel and a couple of other companies, but it's limited. Denmark has a lot of small companies with quality niche products on the highest level possible. And a lot of these companies are not in Brazil. And there's many reasons for that. It's a language problem, it's a culture problem, and it's a business problem, and it's a resource problem. And because of that, they're not being able to really invest in Brazil, which is not a short-term thing, it's really a long-term thing. And you know, other people has done very well, like Lego is doing very well in Brazil right now, and really moving forward. Maersk has just invented $1 billion down in Santos to expand the harbor down there by 30%, and so on and so forth. So Danish companies are investing, but they're investing not at the speed as, in my opinion, they should. They invest around $800, $900 million, which puts Denmark in a clear number 3 position. And they should invest 2 or 3 times as much, but they don't, unfortunately. But that's the situation, that's what it is, and we can't change that too much. Well, we tell the chamber, we always say what the opportunities are here, there's a lot. We tell them too the obstacles which they are, because you have to be honest. You have to tell them the truth, and we tell them very clearly what they have to do and what they have to look for. And with that understanding, some of them get a little nervous. Some things that when they can't speak Portuguese, it's difficult to be here. And it is difficult, we don't, because in the authorities, about 95% do not speak English. So therefore you can't communicate with any of the government agencies without having somebody who speaks Portuguese, which is a big dilemma. But at the same time, If you have somebody who's pretty good over here, you can do business. The Danish companies are doing very good business here. They make money, they make progress, they make growth, they export from here. So you can make money here. That's been proven. And that has a lot to do with that today, 85% of all the leaders of Danish companies in Brazil are run by Brazilians. It is not run anymore by Danes. Because when the Danish managers were running it, they were doing all right, but nothing special. Except Maersk, which always has been very successful in Brazil. But after the turn and went towards Brazilian managements, which have extremely qualified levels, they have done much, much, much better. And this is one of the things I said, don't send these expats out which doesn't know anything about Brazil, doesn't speak the language, doesn't understand the culture differences, because they're lost and they'll only do harm to your business. If they're specific specialists in a thing, all right, that's fine. But to come over and run a company is not easy. There's only a very few ones who's done that in a successful way.
Absolutely.
So remember, Brazilians has great executives trained in both Europe and the United States. They speak beautiful English, and they're very adaptable. They're very open to learn another culture and another country's language and all that. And that's what they're doing extremely well for many, 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 many countries.